So today what we're going to witness is what I call Easter resurrection power. Because what Jesus will do for Lazarus is something he will do for himself in about a week. He will resurrect from the dead. And what he does for Lazarus and for himself is something he will do for every single one of us who trusts in him. And so when we look at Lazarus' miracle, what we are really seeing is a preview of what Jesus will do for every single one of us here if you trust in him. If you look back at verse 4 in John chapter 11, Jesus already told us what the whole purpose of this miracle was. He said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. In other words, the purpose of this miracle is to show the glory of God. But here's the question. What is the glory of God? The word glory literally means weight. I think I mentioned this before, but I'm going to keep repeating it because it's important. When you weigh a piece of gold, when you see how heavy it is, that's how valuable you know that piece of gold is. And so when we see throughout the Bible saying that something will show the glory of God, it is as if you were putting God on a scale. You get a full picture of who he is, and you see how heavy he is, how valuable he is. You see his goodness, his grace, his love, his forgiveness, his holiness, his judgment, his wrath. In other words, the glory of God is the sum total of all of God's attributes put together. And so let me give you the quick point of today's sermon. The purpose of this miracle is to see God and his glory in this miracle. When Jesus became a man, according to John chapter 1, verse 14, John tells us that Jesus did so to reveal God's glory. In other words, to reveal how heavy God is, how valuable he is to us. And so with that in mind, let's do a quick recap of where we have been in this sign leading up to this climactic moment. If you remember, Jesus first heard about the problem when Martha and Mary, the two sisters of Lazarus, sent a messenger to him, letting him know that one of his closest friends is at the point of death. He is sick and will die very soon. And Jesus, when he heard this news, did something very strange. Because verse 5 tells us he loved Lazarus, he loved their family, but he waited 2 days. He waits 2 days, and then he gets to Bethany, and by that time he gets there, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. But here's the thing, we got to do the math a little bit. Even if Jesus left right away when he heard the news, Lazarus would have been dead for how long? 2 days. So why does it matter if he got there when he's dead for 2 days versus 4 days? Well, it's because of the Jewish superstition that was going around at that time. The Jewish people believed when a person dies that the spirit of the person hovers for 3 days, so there's a possibility the spirit can come back into the body within 3 days. But when you get to day 4, the body will decompose so much, the Jewish rabbis would say the spirit cannot get into the body by that point. So in other words, by waiting till day 4, Jesus is making sure nobody has hope by the time he arrives. Nobody's going to think that there's any way Lazarus can come back to life. So he waits 2 days. He gets to Bethany. It's the 4th day. Mary and Martha notice. They know it's over because they've been waiting for 3 days hoping Jesus will come, and he didn't arrive. And in fact, the first words of Mary when Martha and Mary, the same thing they said to Jesus when they saw him was, why didn't you come sooner? Why didn't you get here within the first 3 days? Because now is day 4. The spirit has left. Lazarus is dead. There's no hope anymore. When Jesus sees Mary weeping at his feet, and when he hears the crowd screaming because they hired professional mourners that made a lot of sound to let everybody know somebody died, he gets angry. And he's angry at the reality of death, that every single one of us will have to face death. Every single one of us will be pained by death. And also he gets angry at the hopeless response to death. And so with that, Jesus then steps to Lazarus' tomb. And then it says that Jesus wept. And from these tears, the crowds noticed that. And look at verse 36 to 37. So the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them have said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying? In other words, there's some confusion over Jesus' tears. Some people rightly saw how much Jesus loved Lazarus as a friend. And they began to question both Jesus' love and power. It seems like he really loved Lazarus based on his tears. But if he really loved Lazarus, why didn't he come here within the first 3 days? Because we know how powerful Jesus is. Back in John chapter 9, he healed a man born blind, which was never done since the beginning of all time, according to the passage. And so there's a debate going on amongst the crowds. They're wondering, if Jesus loves Lazarus, as his tears seem to indicate, why didn't he come sooner? And if Jesus is all powerful, as his previous miracles seem to indicate, then what was he doing, waiting around when he got the message? And it's with this, Jesus hearing the crowds, what they're thinking, what they're saying, verse 38, Jesus is going to respond. Then Jesus, deeply moved again, do you notice the word again? Came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone lay against it. If you look back in the passage, when was the last time he was deeply moved? It was when he saw Mary broken at his feet. And the word deeply moved doesn't mean compassion. In the Greek, it refers to agitation and anger. Jesus is angry now. He was angry when he saw Mary broken down at his feet, and now he's angry when he sees and hears what the crowds are saying about him. How can a loving person allow this to happen? Have you ever heard that? How can a loving God allow my loved one to die? And that angers Jesus, because now they're questioning both his love and his power. Before he responded with words to Martha, before he responded with emotions to Mary, but now he will respond with action because of this crowd. So hearing this, being upset and angry and agitated in his soul, he goes to the tomb where Lazarus was. If you notice the text, it tells us that it was a cave, actually. This was a 6 by 9 foot cave, so the size of a small office. And in this cave, there will be 3 shelves on the left, 3 rock shelves on the right, and 2 shelves in the middle. And each shelves will hold a single human body. So the idea was that one family would have a single cave so that up to 8 members of that family will be buried in it. So this was a family tomb, in other words. Most people had this if you had some money. And we know Mary and Martha were really well off, so this was a nicer tomb, a big tomb, so to speak. And when you buried a person, Jewish people didn't wait to bury them right away. They would bury them the same day that person died because the body would decompose pretty quickly. And what they would do is they would place the body on the size of linen cloth that is twice the length of the body and about the width so that they can cover up the torso and bind the ankles together and then cover up the rest of the body. Then they'll have a separate face cloth and put it on the face. And then what they will do is get some spices and rub it into the cloth so that it would hide the smell of rotting flesh. And so this is what's been going on. Keep in mind, they don't have the technology that we do. So when a body's been dead for 4 days, you can imagine how far the body has decomposed already, even with the spices. And so they put a body that's decomposing in the cave and they cover it with the rock so that the smell doesn't come out and make the whole village stink. So Jesus comes and he says something that will be sacrilegious to the crowd. Move the stone away. Now, if that were you and your brother was dead, the last thing you would want to see is his rotting body, right? Even at a funeral today, we do whatever we can. We put makeup on a person. We put clothing on them. They do all these things in the mortuary to make it seem like they're kind of alive in a funeral. But in reality, in a natural state, a body that's decomposing is not a sight anybody wants to see. And so when Jesus says, take away the stone, you can sense Martha's anger a little bit. She's a little annoyed. Because she's probably thinking, well, Jesus, we told you to come earlier. You could have said goodbye earlier. It's too late. It's day 4. The body's rotting. I don't want to see my brother this way. Please do not move the stone. It's there for a reason, right? Notice the text. Martha, and John kind of highlights who she is again, reminding us who's Martha. The sister of the dead man, right? Very close, said to Jesus, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days. In other words, why would you want to move the stone? It's too late. If anything, we're going to see a visual reminder of death, and I don't want to see my brother that way. None of us will want to see our loved one that way. But notice what Jesus said to Martha. He said in verse 40, did I not tell you that if you believed, you will see the glory of God? Do you notice the repetition from verse 4? But here's the strange thing about what Jesus said. He never said this statement to Martha in the whole narrative. Do you notice that? The only thing we know from before in verse 4 is when Jesus sent the messengers back to Mary and Martha, he said to tell them that this illness will not lead to death, but to the glory of God. And then when Jesus arrives in Bethany, Jesus says this to Martha in verse 25 to 26, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. If everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And so even though Jesus didn't actually say the actual phrase, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? He expected Martha to connect the dots. He's expecting Martha to connect the dots. He's saying, remember when I sent the messengers back and I said, this illness of Lazarus will lead to the glory of God. And remember when you were crying in front of me and I told you, I am the resurrection and the life, and whoever believes in me shall not die, but live? He's saying to Martha, connect the dots, Martha. I'm about to do something to show the glory of God. And you should pick up on this because I've told you this in different ways. I'm not here to just grieve over one of my best friends and look at his rotting body. I'm going to do something that will show the full weight of God. I will show God's goodness. I will show God's power. I will show God's love. I will show his wrath against sin. I will show all of these attributes put together if you would just let me in this moment. And so he's speaking to Martha, but he's also speaking to the crowds who are there, as if to tell them, if you really believe I'm the resurrection and the life, meaning that I have power over death, then you should have confidence in what I'm telling you. Move the stone. You see, Jesus wants Martha not just to believe in some right theology. He wants Martha to trust the right person in this moment. Because if you remember from last week, Martha knew her theology. She knew one day she would see Lazarus on the final day of resurrection, but that doesn't help with the pain of death in the meanwhile. He's not saying focus on future events according to theology. Look at the person you're talking to right now. Do you trust me? You said you believe I'm the Christ, the anointed one. You said you believe that I'm the one that all these signs are pointing to, that I have power over all things, including death. Do you trust me right now? I want you to notice, though, Jesus did not tell Martha, though, that if you trust in me or if you believe in me, that you will see a miracle. Do you notice he didn't say that? Because whether Martha believes in Jesus, whether Mary believes in Jesus, whether the crowds believe in Jesus, he's already determined back in verse 11 that he's going to do a miracle when he told his disciples. He didn't say, trust in me so you will see a miracle. He says, trust in me so that you will see the glory of God. You see, there's a difference between seeing a miracle versus seeing God in those miracles. Did you know that you could see a miracle without ever seeing God's glory in those miracles? It's very possible that many of us have seen God work his miraculous power in our lives, but maybe it's possible we never saw God in those miracles. We see the same theme throughout the 7 signs of Jesus. Many people saw Jesus do signs and wonders and miracles, but not everybody saw Jesus in those miracles. In John chapter 2, when Jesus turned water into wine, it tells us in the text that the disciples saw Jesus in that miracle and they trusted in him. However, we fast forward, and when Jesus feeds about 20,000 people in John chapter 6 with bread and fish, nobody saw Jesus in that miracle. They just came back the next day wanting more bread, and when he didn't give them more bread and started talking about himself, they all walked away except for his 12 apostles. In other words, if you experience a miracle from God, that doesn't necessarily mean you're seeing the glory of God in those miracles. You only see the glory of God in those miracles if you actually trust in God. It doesn't take an unbeliever's trust want miracles in their lives. I have unbelieving friends who call me, pray for my son, he's about to die or he's sick. They don't even believe in Jesus. You know why? Because people will see miracles as solution to problems while never seeing God if they don't trust in Jesus. If you're in a financial situation, you need money, every person will pray that God will give some money to help them. Maybe you'll ever see a miracle, a check dropping from the sky. That doesn't mean you saw God in that miracle, though, if you never trusted in Jesus. If your relationships are messed up, all of us will pray for God to fix that relationship through a miracle. But that doesn't mean you actually saw Jesus in that miracle. If your health is failing, you will pray for a miracle to fix your problem. But here's the problem. The minute your problem is fixed by a miracle, you move on to the next problem and you never see Jesus in the process. Do you guys know people who have literally experienced the grace of God and they never saw God in those things, never thanked God, never gave their life to Christ in those miracles? Because Jesus says you can experience a miracle, but that doesn't mean you will see the glory of God in those miracles unless you actually trust in Jesus. But here's the thing. It is through these miracles, Jesus wants you to get a clear picture of God himself. And when you get a clear picture of God and you see his glory, you no longer look for solutions to problems. You just want more of God. That's the difference. It's no longer, God, fix this financial problem. It is, God, whether I'm rich or poor, I just want more of Jesus in my life. God, it's not, God, give me a better job. It is, I don't care what my career is as long as I have Jesus in my life. It's not, God, just fix this marriage because we're falling at the seams. Or, no, it's, God, I just want Jesus because he is the one that gives me meaning in the end. You see, so many of us, we keep praying, saying, I need more money, I need a better job, I need a better marriage. Some of us say, I need a marriage, and some of us get married, say, I don't want a marriage anymore. And then some of us say, I need better kids, I want other kids, I want new kids, right? And then we keep going on and on and on. And then what happens? You go from problem to problem to problem to problem, and maybe by God's grace, he keeps giving these miracles in your lives, but you never see Jesus in those miracles. What a tragedy to go through life experiencing the miracles of God and never seeing God in those miracles. But when you see God, specifically when you see Jesus, oh, you don't care about solutions anymore. Whether I'm sick or healthy, I want Jesus. Whether I'm rich or poor, I want him. Whether my marriage is good or falling apart, I want Jesus. Because his glory is more valuable than the solutions I've been searching for in my life. And that is what this miracle is pointing to. It's pointing to not a solution to the problem of death. It's pointing to the glory of Christ. And what we see in here is that Jesus is the glorious one. Jesus is the face of God. Jesus has power over death. And if you trust in him, you get more of Jesus' power in your life. You get more of Jesus' presence in your life. Regardless of your circumstances, you can have joy because you have Jesus. You can have love because you have Jesus. You can have patience because you have Jesus. All you want is Jesus when you finally see Jesus in his signs. That's what Easter's about. We want to see Jesus more. And every time we gather, what we are saying is, I want to see Jesus again and again and again, whether or not he fixes these problems I'm going through. Well, Jesus now is going to show his glory. You guys ready? Verses 41 to 42. He starts with prayer. So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this on account of the people standing around. Again, why? So that they may believe that you have sent me. What Jesus is praying is that he is doing this for their sake. He's saying, I always know you hear me. We've been unified since the beginning of time. My prayer, Jesus' prayer is not for his sake, it's for everyone else's sake. And he's saying, I want them to know that what I'm about to do is to show the glory of God so that they will trust in me. So that they will know who I really am. And so for 42 verses and 3 weeks, we've been waiting for this moment. Verse 43. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. You can imagine the silence when he said that. This is the voice of God speaking. This is the voice of the one who created the universe out of nothing. This is a preview of what Jesus will do on the last day, according to John chapter 5, verse 25, when he will call every single one of us by his voice and bring us back to life and resurrect us. Some theologians have said that if Jesus just said, come out, all the tombs will break open and all the dead bodies will come up. So he got very specific. Lazarus, come out. Everyone will stay. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Just you, Lazarus, you come out. That's the power of Jesus' voice, by the way. Through his word, the entire universe was created, and through his word, he reverses decomposition. He reverses aging and death. He reverses the natural physics and laws that we go through. He reverses everything, and he stops it. He reverses it, restores his body, and now people are waiting. Because now's the moment of truth. He's gone 3.5 years making a lot of claims about himself. That he's the Messiah, he's the anointed one, he's the Son of God, he's the one that the Father sent. But if Lazarus is still dead, then he's a fraud. So everybody is waiting. You can hear the heartbeats of Mary and Martha. Because it's one thing to know this in your head, but it's another thing to actually experience it. I know Jesus could, but did he really? So they're waiting. Come on, Lazarus, come out, please. Are you there? I'm sure the skeptical crowd is like, who is this maniac talking about Lazarus come out, right? Verse 44. We don't even get his name. The man who had died came out. His hands and feet were bound with linen strips, his face wrapped with a cloth. So he's still bound up, almost looking like a mummy at this point. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. That's it. Isn't that anticlimactic? There's no trumpets. There's no cheering. In fact, I would bet everybody was dead silent for a long time. In fact, we don't even know what Lazarus said when he came out of the tomb. Did he say, why does heaven look like Bethany? Why is heaven, how did Mary and Martha beat me to Jesus here, or to God? Why are they here? We don't know what Lazarus said because nobody cares what Lazarus said. The focus is not on the man who had died. The focus is on the one who just raised the man who had died. And everyone is looking now at Jesus with their jaws dropped, and Jesus is just so nonchalant. He's not saying, make sure the press gets the news. Make sure you know what I'm about to. He's like, oh, you know what? He looks a little uncomfortable. Unbind him, unwrap him. Let's go. That's it. That's the power of Jesus right there. That's the glory of God. One sentence, death is defeated. One sentence, everything changed for this village. According to Jesus, this miracle is not really about Lazarus coming back to life. The point of this miracle was to give a picture, a glimpse of God's glory. And we see the ripple effects that this miracle did do amongst all the people, not just in this village, from all around. Because if you see in John chapter 11, look at verses 9 through 11 there. It says, when the large crowd of the Jews learned that Jesus was there, they came not only on account of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death as well, because on account of him, many of the Jews were going away and believing in Jesus. And again, we see in verses 17 through 19, the crowd that had been raised, that had been with him, and when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead, continuing to bear witness. The reason why the crowd went to meet him was that they heard he had done this sign. So the Pharisees said to one another, you see that you are gaining nothing. Look, the world has gone after him. You start to see that the death of Lazarus is making ripple effects. This is a couple miles from Jerusalem. This is during the time of the Passover. Millions of people are passing through Bethany on the way to Jericho and Jerusalem, and they're all hearing about this miracle. In fact, it got so bad that the Pharisees were saying, maybe we should murder Lazarus, because him being alive is really messing up our plans here to undermine Jesus. And so what Jesus does for Lazarus is a sign. And remember what I said a sign is? The sign points to something else. You don't look at the sign and just study the sign and stay at the sign. You don't look at the red octagon and just study it, the shape. What's the Greek word for red? What's the Greek word for S-T-O-P? You look at what that sign points to, which is the reality that, hey, when you get to this point, stop. That's what the sign is about. So what is the sign pointing to? Not just Lazarus coming back to life, but that Jesus is the one who has power over death. And whoever trusts in him will experience the same thing that Lazarus experienced that day. And the way Jesus proves it is not just what he does for Lazarus, it's what he does even for himself a week from this point. When he dies on a Friday, resurrects on a Sunday, and he defeats death forever. And what he tells us through his resurrection is that your story will end with the resurrection if you trust in the one who has the power to resurrect the dead. You know, knowing the ending to a story changes the way you live in the meanwhile, doesn't it? Let me tell you a quick story. Not a true story, but I liked it because it was online, so I'll read it for you. It was a Friday night, A young lady was waiting for her boyfriend for a 6 o'clock dinner appointment to get picked up. She waited. It was 6:10. 6:20. Finally, at 6:42, she hears a honk. She comes out dressed up in a nice dress and really disappointed already in her boyfriend. She goes into the car, sits down next to him, and he goes, "Where do you want to eat?" And she thinks, "You didn't plan a place?" And he says, "You want to go to Panera?" Panera? His dad is a manager of a Panera. He's just trying to be a cheap date. And what's so meaningful about bagels? Ugh. So they go with some bagels and bread and a soup, broccoli cheddar. Yuck, right? I'm sorry if you like it. One day you'll taste something better in the kingdom, I'm telling you, but for now. So she's eating the broccoli cheddar soup, and the boyfriend just kind of, he's like distracted the whole time, and he goes, "You want to go to the beach after?" "The beach? Why didn't you tell me ahead of time? I'm wearing a dress. I don't have something to change into." And she thinks in her head, this is the worst date ever. He was late, he doesn't plan ahead, and he doesn't want to spend money, and I'm just eating a bunch of soup at Panera, and we're going to go to a beach, and I'm going to get sand all over myself. Now let's rewind. And now let's imagine that the same evening starts, but this time, before the date arrives, she gets a phone call. It's her friend. "You know who I just saw at the mall? I saw your boyfriend. And you know where he was going to? He was getting a ring." Oh, now she knows how the story's going to end. And so she's waiting. 6:30, he's late. It's okay. So 6:40, he must be planning something big. This is amazing. 6:42, a honks. And she's all excited running to the car. She runs in. She's like, he asks her, "Where do you want to go?" She's like, "Oh, anywhere." And she means anywhere at this point. She doesn't care. Panera. Oh, her dad is the manager of Panera. Probably something special. And you know what's up Panera? Bagels the shape of rings. Oh, this is amazing. And they're eating, and she's slurping up that broccoli cheddar soup. Oh my gosh, she's looking for the ring in the soup. Is it in this soup? Is it in this soup? And then he goes, "You want to go to the beach?" The beach? Perfect. It's about to sunset. This is going to be the picture. I bet somebody's hiding with their camera. This is the best date ever. You see, when you know how the story ends, it changes the way you interpret everything in the meanwhile, doesn't it? Let me ask you something really simple. Do you know how your story will end? If you trust in Jesus, your story will end with the resurrection. And so, as you go through this life of trials, it will hurt. Oh, but you're excited because you know what's coming. Yes, death has taken a loved one from me, but resurrection means I'm going to see my loved one again in the kingdom. Yes, death means my body is going to break down over time, but resurrection means I'm going to get a new body that will never break down again. Yes, I can't see Jesus face to face, and I can only hear his words through the Bible, but one day I will see Jesus face to face in the resurrection. Your story will end with a resurrection. And when you see a picture of Jesus as your King, your Savior, and Lord, you will live life with hope no matter what you go through. Because you're not wondering what's going to happen after death. You're not wondering what's going to happen later. You're not scared about the economy or what's going on. You know your story's going to end with Jesus saying with the voice, "Andrew, come out and enter into my kingdom." And that is the greatest news you can ever hear today. That resurrection is waiting for those who trust in King Jesus. However, if you don't trust in Jesus, no wonder you're always anxious. No wonder you're afraid of death. No wonder circumstances start to destroy you really easily. Because your story is ending with you thinking somehow you can get yourself out of all your problems. If only I had more money, then I'll be safe. If only I had a marriage, then I'll be happy. If only I had this, then. And you are living a life where you think you write the ending to your story. Isn't this why people are so stressed out today about everything? Because they don't know how their story ends. Because if death is the final chapter for you, you should be anxious every day. Because today can be it, and you haven't written your story yet. If that is you, I invite you to experience some transcendent peace today. If you trust in the one who raised Lazarus back to life, you are trusting in the one who will raise you back to life. And he has demonstrated this, not just through Lazarus, but through himself. And this is what millions and billions of Christians throughout history and around the world today are saying. He is risen. His tomb is empty. And so if Jesus resurrected from the dead, that means you will resurrect from the dead if you place your faith in him. Listen, Easter is all about Jesus. Because if Jesus never resurrected, then he does not have power over death. And if Jesus does not have power over death, that means none of us have hope beyond death. That's the bad news. No matter how successful you are, your success will not save you from death. No matter how healthy you are, your health will not save you from death. No matter how rich you are, your riches won't save you from death. No matter how great your community is, that will not save you from death. Death is a great enemy that all of us will have to face, and death is something none of us can overcome with our own power. That's the bad news. But here's the good news. And we're people of good news. This is why we believe in the gospel. Jesus did turn water into wine. Jesus did heal a royal official's son with words. Jesus did confront legalism by healing a man on the Sabbath. Jesus did feed thousands with bread from heaven. Jesus did walk on stormy waters. Jesus did heal a man who was born blind. And Jesus did raise Lazarus back to life. And he did all these signs so that we will see glimpses of him as our risen King. Jesus is the Christ, the anointed one, the one who holds the power of God and is the face of God. But the most important question for all of us today is this: do you believe this? Do you trust him? Not just with your words, but do you trust him with your life? Whose hands are holding you up today? Is it yours or is it Jesus's? And do you know how your story will end? I pray that every single one of us can walk out of here with a newfound hope, because we know how our story ends. Yes, you can knock us down in the meanwhile. You can take a loved one. You can take my health. You can take everything from me in this world, but you cannot take my hope away. Because the resurrection lets me know how my story will end. And I will look forward to the day when I get to see Jesus face to face and say, thank you. Let's pray.